The first request I ever sent through a new shared pool came back with a challenge page, not the 10th request, the first one. Before I had pulled a single page with it. I had not set a header wrong, I had not run too fast, I had not done anything at all yet. Somebody else had, from the same address. At some point I am never going to be able to see. That is the purchase, that is what the word shared is describing, and it is not the thing the pricing page told me I was buying. Why I am the one saying this? I sell mobile proxy lines, SIM cards on Singapore carriers, modems on a shelf in my flat, about $10 a month per line in carrier data, and another $1.50 in modem depreciation. I sell them one line to one customer, so you should hear all of this with a hand on your wallet. I also buy shared pools constantly for my own scraping. For most of what I do, shared is the correct purchase, and paying for dedicated would be me setting money on fire. So this is not building up to telling you to spend more. The argument is about what you are actually being sold. What the page says you are buying. On a pricing page, shared reads as an arrangement about capacity. Several customers, one address, the cost split between you. The number is smaller because you are not renting the whole thing. That framing is about bandwidth. The pipe is wide, you only need part of it, so you pay for part of it. There is a separate piece on this site about reading a proxy pricing page, and it handles dedicated versus shared as a pricing model, which is the right lens when you have two invoices side by side. This is a different question. What is physically being shared once the money has moved? And it is not the pipe. The first thing you share is standing. An IP address arrives at a website carrying a history, not a formal one, a scattered one, written independently by every site that has ever seen it. A large retailer keeps its own record of which addresses have behaved like a scraper. An anti-bot vendor keeps a score. A login page keeps a note of how many failed attempts came from where. None of those records care which customer of which seller was on the address at the time. The address is the identity. That is the entire unit of judgment. So a share of an address is a share of that standing, all of it, including the parts that happened when you were nowhere near it. Somebody else's Tuesday is your Wednesday. Put a number on it. Say that address is sold to 8 customers, which is a modest figure and probably an optimistic one. One of the other 7 is running something loud, not malicious, just aggressive. 60 requests a minute at a marketplace, no pacing, no back off, hammering the retry every time it gets refused. The marketplace notices. What it notices is an address. You turn up at that same marketplace the next morning at 4 requests a minute, headers in order, sessions held properly, doing every single thing you would tell somebody else to do. You get the wall anyway. The target never looked at your behavior, it looked at an address, and that address had already had its week. The rate limit is shared as well. This is the part I get argued with about, so let me be blunt. A site that rate limits per address is counting requests per address per window. It is not counting your requests, it counts every request arriving from that address, and it has no mechanism for telling you apart from the other people paying for it. So if 6 of you are on it, and each of you is sitting politely at 5 requests a minute because you read a guide about being polite, the site sees 30. Your pacing is real and it protects nobody, because the thing you are pacing is not the thing being measured. There is a piece on this site about how much concurrency is safe, and every number in it quietly assumes the address is yours. On a shared pool, you divide those figures by a number the seller will not give you. You share the pool's behavior, not only your address. Zoom out one level, because targets do. A large site does not only score individual addresses, it scores the block they sit in and the network they are registered to. Once a run of addresses from one registration keeps producing the same pattern, the cheapest defense available is to stop treating them as addresses and start treating them as a category. That is a decision about a range. Rotating inside that range does nothing for you because rotation moves you to a different address inside the same category. So a pool whose customers annoy your target has not handed you a bad address. It has handed you a bad neighborhood, and the seller cannot repair that by issuing you a fresh IP out of the same stock. That is the failure mode where people spend 2 weeks rewriting their own code for no reason. The part that is not on anybody's page Everything up to here has been about the other people on the address right now, that is half of it, and the smaller half. The sharing is historical. A rotating pool hands you an address, and that address had a holder before you, and one before that, going back as far as the pool has existed. All of them left something behind on every site they touched, so when the pool rotates you onto an address at 9 in the morning, you have just inherited the accumulated record of everybody who has ever held it, months of it, including customers who cancelled last year, and there is no way to look at any of it, no log, no history, nothing the seller can hand over even if they felt like it. They usually do not have it either. A seller knows which of their customers held an address. They do not know what those customers did with it. A reputation lookup gets you closer than nothing. It tells you whether a scoring service has already made its mind up. It will not tell you what your specific target remembers, and your specific target holds the only opinion in this that costs you money. You are buying a used address with no service history. An honest listing would say so. You cannot build a good record on it either. The flip side of that gets less attention and it annoys me more. On a line that is only mine, 3 months of sane behavior at one target is worth something real. The address stops looking new to it. The failed login count sits at 0. That record grows while I sleep and it belongs to me. On a shared address, you are writing into a notebook 6 other people also write in. Nothing you do accumulates. Whatever goodwill your careful Monday earns gets spent by somebody else on the Tuesday. So being well behaved on a shared pool never compounds. It buys you the week you are on that address, and it ends the moment the pool rotates you somewhere else. When shared is the right buy, and you should keep your money. 4 situations where I buy shared without thinking twice about it. Broad crawling across a lot of unrelated targets. When you touch 2,000 domains, and none of them more than a few hundred times, no single site accumulates enough of a view of that address to form an opinion about it. The sharing costs you nothing you could measure, no volume anywhere. If the entire job is 4,000 pages a month, you are not the reason an address gets burned, and you are not sitting on it long enough to inherit much, anything where a failure just means retrying. If a block means the record goes back on the queue and lands 20 minutes later, the occasional dead address is a rounding error in your runtime, and paying 4 times more to avoid it is a bad trade and one-off research jobs. You pull the data once, you are never coming back to that target, and whatever opinion it forms about the address becomes somebody else's problem next month. Slightly rude of me to say out loud, but that is the actual economics of it. When it is the wrong purchase, one high-value target, if the whole job is a single site, and the business depends on the rows coming out of it, you have concentrated every bit of shared history onto the one opinion you cannot afford to lose. Worse, the other customers on that pool are probably pointed at the same target because that is what the pool was marketed as being good for. Anything logged in, an account attaches a name to an address. The moment you log in, the address stops being anonymous traffic and becomes your account's home. Share that with 6 strangers and an account you care about is sitting on an IP whose behavior you do not control, cannot see, and cannot explain when somebody asks you to. And anything where a block is expensive to unwind. A permanent ban on an account you spent 3 months warming is not a retry. A data source you have a commercial arrangement with deciding you are abusive is not a retry either. When recovery costs days, the gap between shared and dedicated pricing stops being the number worth optimizing. Where I land on it, shared pools get sold as a general purpose product, and they are not one. What they are is a specialized tool that happens to be cheap, and the specialization is breadth. Spread thin across many targets, they are excellent. Aimed at one target that matters, they are the wrong shape, and the discount stops being a discount. Plenty of people running much larger scraping operations than mine disagree with that, run everything on shared pools, and do fine. Their answer is volume. Buy enough addresses that the bad ones stop mattering statistically. That works, and at their scale it works better than my version does. I cannot tell you how many people are on an address. Neither can most sellers, honestly. I have asked plenty of times. The good answers are ranges, up to 5, usually fewer. The bad answers are silence or a confident number that turns out to describe a plan tier rather than an address. And I have been on the other side of that question. I have sold shared capacity. If a customer had asked me what the previous holder of a rotated address had done to one particular retailer, I could not have answered them. I did not hold that data. Nobody selling shared addresses holds it at the resolution that would actually help you. Even on my own dedicated lines, the history only starts the day the SIM went into the modem. What the carrier did with that IP block before it reached me is not visible to me either. Mobile addresses get recycled through real subscribers, and some of those subscribers were not careful. Test it against the thing you care about. There is a full piece on this site about testing a proxy before you buy, with the whole sequence in it. The line that matters for this one is short. Do not evaluate a shared pool against an address checker or some neutral page and call it tested, because a neutral page has no opinion about anybody and will load identically for a burnt address and a clean one. Send 200 requests of your real shape at your real target, and count the rows your parser gets out of them rather than the responses that came back. The questions I put to a seller about how a pool is shared, and the check I run before one goes anywhere near a real job, are at proxyscraping.org. Subscribe for more on proxies for scraping work.